Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT4 Championship for 2022, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform known as iRacing, available only on PC. Today marks the penultimate round of the championship. It is the case that we are here at Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium for what is round number 8 of the 9-round series, and well, my goodness, as we make our way into the second of the 3 endurance stage rounds, it is the case that the stakes could not be higher, given how close we are to wrapping up the championship. Only one more round after this, and that means that every point is critical from this point onwards. As if they weren't already critical, the points now becoming limited supply, and our drivers will be looking to achieve as much as possible over the remaining 2 rounds to end their championship on the ultimate high, whether it is taking the championship crown overall within the Pro or the AM class, all 30 for the teams, or whether it's just in the endurances stage, taking home that individual stage win. There's plenty to play for, and indeed nothing is certain at the moment, and if Bathurst last time out is any indicator to go by, we're sure to have a few surprises here today in Belgium. And indeed, what brilliant timing as well, with the 24-hour of Spa as hosted by the Fanatec GT World Challenge Series taking place as of this weekend. It is the case that Spa-Francorchamps playing host to this round. It's only fitting, and what a circuit as well, and we'll talk more about the circuit specifically in short order. But coming to our schedule for today in British summertime, the times, or BST or UTC +1, it is the case that in just under 14 minutes time we'll be getting underway with our qualifying session. 15 minutes to determine our grid order for the purposes of our one and only race today, and that will of course be the 20-minute sprint race, which will see our drivers have to get to the front of their field, or respective class we should really say, and hang in there to get the all-important points for race victory. Alternatively, if they can also get the fastest lap on the board, they'll get an extra point there, and also pole position has an extra point that comes with it. As for the broadcast, it is the case we're bringing you this race as a post-round broadcast. So it is the case that whilst all the racing action occurred earlier in the week, particularly on Wednesday the 27th of July, it is the case we're bringing it to you as if it were live. And I, as your host and commentator, do not know what happens at any point tonight, where it's in practice, whether it's in qualifying, all 30 in the race. It's all raw to me, and therefore if you are tuning in as one of our participating racers, of course we do ask you to avoid spoilers where possible, but on top of that as well, it keeps it nice, raw and fresh for you guys and girls tuning at home who were not privy to the racing that happened early in this week, and indeed it is sure to be an exciting one. But who am I? I am your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And here's the case, we've been providing coverage since the very start, and I'll continue to be providing coverage all the way to the season's conclusion as of next weekend. But speaking of the season, let's take a look to the season ahead, or really the season in the past now, and what we've got left to wrap up. Well, it is the case, of course, our calendar started all the way back at the end of May at Interlagos, kicking off with the Formula 1 stage, and of course our first stage being focused on racing rounds, which were all about essentially Formula 1 circuits. When you think of Formula 1, these are the circuits that you normally think of in a Formula 1 championship, or the most common. Interlagos in South America, Brazil particularly, and then heading across towards continental Europe for the Austrian circuit at the Red Bull Ring, and then wrapping up the F1 stage at Suzuka. And indeed, Suzuka, a very controversial circuit over the years in terms of championship crowns being awarded. None other than the rivalry, of course, of Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna over the course of 2 years, where we saw Prost take the championship 1 year for a collision between the two, and then Senna taking the championship the year after. And it is the case we didn't quite see that much drama at Suzuka, but we still saw some major overtakes and battles, and the crowning of our F1 stage champions. After that, we took a week's break before we made our way to the United States of America, particularly for the Americas stage. It was the case that we kicked off at Road America before making our way to Watkins Glen, and then wrapping up at the Daytona Road Course. And those 3 circuits all being about straight line speed and power deployment, where you want to get rotated through corner apex as soon as possible and then go on the charge. And it was the case, plenty of frantic action, and Daytona Road Course in particular saw those slipstream battles left, right and centre. But then it was the case that we started to make our way into the endurances stage, indeed this final stage, and the endurances stage being focused about circuits which are synonymous with endurance races. So it is the case whether it's 24 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, or anything in between. These are the circuits you typically see on an endurance championship calendar. And we start off, of course, with Mount Panorama, or known more colloquially as Bathurst, last week. And it was the case at Bathurst. We saw the rise of one driver in particular, and that was Tanner Dibble, who really dominated proceedings both in qualifying and in the race. And he'll be the one to watch out for today. And speaking of today, we're, of course, making our way from Australia to Belgium, back back to continental Europe from the Pacific, the South Australian Pacific region, and that is, of course, at Spa-Francorchamps, whereby in Belgium now, this circuit, a very tricky one, over 19 corners, and we'll talk about those corners very shortly, and then we'll be bringing the curtain down on the championship in a week's time. The racing itself will happen on the 3rd of August, but the broadcast will be brought to you as of the 7th of August, and it is the case we'll be heading to the German circuit, known only as the Nürburgring Nordschleife. That's right, the green hell awaits at the conclusion, and it'll be 40 minutes of racing to wrap it all up in a week's time. But before we get there, we must go through Spa, and let's take a look at those championship standings as they currently stand heading into tonight. We start off, of course, with the Pro Class Drivers' Championship overall, and it is the case we can see John Lauzon leads by only 6 points ahead of Edwin Onofre there, and Jerome Bajulaz only a further 7 points behind. It is the case that our top three really closing together as the racing has gone on, and do keep in mind that our top three, having completed 7 out of 7 races so far, have had their drop scores already applied as of this point. There is a drop score involved whereby the drivers' 8 best scores will be taken to their final championship points, and therefore our top three have had their drop scores applied, whereas everybody else has yet to complete up to 7 races, so it is the case we don't have those drop scores applied. And therefore, Lauzon right now the man in the moment. But of course, with that pressure coming on from Onofre and Bajulaz, and we'll have to wonder how they will play out tonight, the three of them. But also keep your eyes on Tanner Dibble. P4 there, it is the case that Dibble definitely showing his strengths, going from strength to strength, round after round, ever since really the conclusion of the America stage back at Daytona. And Dibble, if he can pick up another win here and really put some distance between himself and Lauzon, Onofre and Bajulaz, we could see him have an outside shot in terms of trying to take the championship, or at least finishing inside that top 3 when all is said and done. John Wilding in P5 down 86 points, and John Wilding going from a mixed set of fortunes once more last time out, and it is the case that he'll be looking to try and maintain that P5 with Jordan Butler only a further 8 points behind in P6, and there's Austin Varr, Sam Van Olst, Henry Morse and Rocco Avath who complete the top 10 with Jan Sauber there in P11, and unranked, unable to compete in a round so far, Daniel Downing there off the chart. Meanwhile, we look to the instant count, and it's the case we only focus on our drivers with at least 6 rounds completed, and it is the case our top 3, they're all eligible for the Instant Count Point Championship, and we can see that right now it's Edwin Onofre there on 37, who is significantly ahead of Lauzon and Bajulaz, and really Onofre trying to avoid those instant points wherever possible, and perhaps one of the safest drivers, but also one of the most consistent, and that's why he's P2 in the Pro Championship. But then we do look to the AM class standings meanwhile, and it is the case in the AM Drivers' Championship, Justin Braggon leads on 150 points here, 33 clear of Fernando Takahashi. And last time out, Justin Braggon, of course, bringing home another strong points haul, and it is the case that Braggon really trying to put this championship to bed with only 2 rounds remaining as of tonight. Can he do so or not? That will be the big question. Well, I can tell you right now, out on circuit, he's definitely looking to do so. Takahashi, meanwhile, in that P2 position, it is the case. The now Mercedes driver, 7 points clear of Jermaine Warren, but keep your eyes on Jermaine Warren. It is the case Jermaine Warren has been showing sparks of brilliance throughout the season, and it does look as though it's going to be a 2-horse race to that P2 in the championship, unless Justin Braggon drops some major points here at Spa-Francorchamps. Then we have Lee Porter in P4 on 99 points, only 5 clear of Mark Senegal. An interesting contrast between the two. It is the case whereas Lee Porter started off very strong and made his way into the midpoint of the season, since really the midpoint of what is the America stage, we've seen Lee Porter's pace oscillate a little bit, where Mark Senegal has gradually built on that pace as the season has progressed, and it is the case the two contrasting fortunes of Porter and Senegal lead to them only being 5 points adrift. Kenny B. Smith, meanwhile, in P6, 7 points clear of Rodney Felker, and then we have Stefan Chalafu, Duncan Moraes and Blake Phillips completing the top 10 there, albeit Blake Phillips and Roger Ganesh both classified as P10 as it currently stands, due to them being joint on 21 points. Glenn Bratton, meanwhile, P12, then making his debut last time out at Mount Panorama. A great debut for Glenn Bratton, bringing home a good amount of points there. Wasn't quite on the pace of his peers, but still kept it out of the wall for the most part, and therefore that means consistency does reward you with prizes, and he brought home 16 points. Albert Brown in P13 and Craig Parks in P14. Unranked there, Antonin Doe and Dale Coate. They have not been able to take part in a round so far, and we do potentially hope to see them make their way in to one of the last 2 rounds. Meanwhile, in the Instant Point Count Championship, it is the case we look to our drivers with 6 races completed, and in particular that is Justin Braggon, Fernando Takahashi, Lee Porter and Mark Senegal, and it is the case that right now Fernando Takahashi on only 18 instant points is well ahead. Meanwhile, at the other end of the spectrum, Mark Senegal on 48, who will look to try and bring those down, not to be given effectively what we would like to refer to as the Wooden Spoon Award for picking up the most instant count points, and indeed he'll need to avoid those contacts and those runoffs. But meanwhile, Takahashi, if he can keep this up, he's definitely looking good for the season finale in terms of those instant points. As for our team standings, it is the case that middle of the pack Racing now lead on 313 points, a good advantage of 53 points ahead of Blue Flag Motorsports. Blue Flag Motorsports, in turn, a sizable 33-point advantage ahead of DNA Racing, with then Goldwing Motorsports really leading the best of the rest in P4, 6 clear of Ascension Racing, and then Sunday GT Turtles, Delta Motorsports and Motus Racing completing the team championship standings. There's no prizes up for grabs, of course, in the team standings. It's just for a little bit of informal interest, but meanwhile, we do talk about prizes when we come to the endurance stage standings. And starting off with the pro standings for the endurance stage, we can see after one round, Tanner Dibble really dominating at Bathurst with 28 points. And of course, that's for the win, plus also the fastest lap, and also what was the pole position in qualifying. And it is the case that Dibble with a 7-point advantage, if he can win big here today at Spa, he'll definitely have all the momentum behind him going into the season finale. And he'll want that momentum at the circuit where anything can happen before the finish. Well, indeed, at any circuit it can happen, but at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, it really is the case at any moment it can all go wrong. But meanwhile, looking from John Wilding there in P2 to John Lauzon in P3, it is the case that Lauzon there in that P3 position on 19 points. He'll be looking to try and take the fight to Wilding, and then Jordan Butler, Jerome Bajolaz and Edwin Offre there complete the standings with Austin Farr, Daniel Downing, Henry Morse, Jan Sauber, Rocco Avaf and Sam Van Olst unranked. And then as for the AM Endurance Stage Championship, it is the case we can see Jermaine Warren leads by only a single point ahead of Justin Braggon, and then Fernando Takahashi a further 5 points behind. And we definitely saw last time out that mixture of fortunes within our AMs, whereby it was a win for Jermaine Warren, but in terms of that fastest lap, it was exchanged multiple times, and in the end, Jermaine Warren with that 1 point advantage, he'll look to try and dominate more tonight in order to be able to extend that advantage, and Justin Braggon will hope he doesn't manage to do so and will try to intervene. Meanwhile, Stefan Chalafu in P4 looking to try and close that gap to Fernando Takahashi by 2 points, and then Glenn Bratton, last but not least, in 5th there on 16 points, and unranked, having not yet participated, but I do believe we may have 1 or 2 more of our AMs participating tonight and making their debut in the endurance stage. We have Albert Brand, Antonin Dew, Blake Phillips, Craig Parks, Del Coate, Duncan Moraes, Kenny B. Smith, Lee Porter, Mark Senegal, Roddy Felker and Roger Ganesh. Well, it is the case now. We look from our championship standings to the track, and well, we are here today in Stavelot, Belgium, for the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and this circuit map provided to us by SimRacingWiki.com, to whom we're very grateful to. It is the case made up of 19 corners. Most of these corners will be household names, where it's La Source at turn 1, the run through the Eau Rouge to Radillon complex at turns 2 through to 4, onto the Kemmel Straight, and then the run through at Les Combes at turns 5 through to 7, before coming down into Rivage at turn number 8, a very tricky downhill braking zone, and indeed an extended U-shaped corner whereby it's the case that you're constantly going downhill and you need to be very careful about how soon you get on the throttle before running into what used to be known as No Name Corner at turn number 9, now known as X Corner, in honour of Jackie X, of course, a very famous driver from Belgium. And then we do have Pouhon Corner at turns 10 and 11, the downhill drop there through Pouhon, a bit of a contrast really to the uphill run from Eau Rouge to Radillon, and it is the case at Pouhon Corner we could see quite a few drivers run wide if they get it wrong. At turns 12 and 13, we do of course have the Fangers chicane, followed up by Stavelot 1 and Stavelot 2 at turns 14 and 15, or Stavelot 2 also being known as the curve at Paul Ferrier, before then our drivers will make the way in the long charge up the back straight to Blanchimont corner at turn number 17, and it is the case our drivers will be looking to go as close as possible to flat out through the left-hander there, before charging down into the heavy braking zone for the slowest 2 corners on the circuit, the bus stop chicane at turns 18 and 19, and we're likely to see plenty of overtaking attempts into the chicane. But looking from our circuit map to the rules, in terms of setups, our drivers will be running the iRacing baseline setup for all races, including this one and the season finale, with fuel loads being restricted to 50%. As for qualifying, the session will of course be broken into 2 equal halves, the first half being for our AM drivers, the second half for our pro drivers. In a sprint race, the race will start under manual double file rolling start, with the formation being held up to the start finish line, after which drivers may go racing. Each driver will have 1 fast repair available, and the drivers will receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. Well, that's enough about rules and regulations. I know what you're all here for. You're here for the racing. We are indeed, and it is the case we are now heading straight into qualifying here, and well, it'll be the opportunity opportunity now for our drivers to get some good laps on the board as qualifying gets underway, and it will be our first AMs who make their way on out to the circuit. And well, we can see here a number of them just getting themselves set in the cars, but we do have one driver making the way out already, and I do believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Jermaine Warren rolling his way on out here. And it is the case that we are running the shortened pit lane for the purposes of today, so we're not running the full endurance pit lane, but instead I think it is known as the Formula 1 pit lane, given the fact that the Formula 1 start line is effectively on the run out of the bus stop chicane down towards the source, whereas the endurance start line, if you will, and what you'll typically see such as in the 24-hour Spa, the start line is actually just before the run up the hill through Eau Rouge and Radillon, and that is a particular starting line, and the pit exit is on the exit of Radillon onto the Kimmel Straight. But it is the case we're running the F1 pit lane here today to shorten that pit time for our drivers and indeed give them plenty of opportunity to get those qualifying laps in. Now, in terms of Spa-Francorchamps, what do you need in qualifying to do well here? Well, it is the case you need to have a level head on you. You cannot afford to overdrive the car around here. It's the case over a single lap, you may get away with it, and indeed in qualifying, as we see there already, Justin Braggon losing the rear of the car, almost getting it wrong, coming out of turn number 7 already as he heads his way down in towards Rivage Corner. But the thing is, in particular, this circuit does bite back as soon as you push hard, and it's all about balancing the car around the lap. It is the case we have 3 very bespoke sectors. The first sector, in terms of Formula 1 sectors here, which concludes from what is the start-finish line all the way towards what is the braking zone for Lake at turn number 5, so at the end of the Kimmel Straight. That sector is all about confidence and carrying speed uphill for the Eau Rouge Radillon complex, indeed being as flat out as possible. So in this case, it's a high-speed sector. Sector 2, which you're seeing Justin Braggon make his way through right now, and indeed as we look to the back of our AMs leaderboard to making his way on through, it's the most technical sector, which runs from Lake at turn number 5 all the way to the entry point into Stablo 2 at turn number 15. And this sector is where we've got the majority of the corners, where we'll see a lot of the braking action and indeed a mixture of low and medium speed corners, before then sector 3, which is the run through Stablo 2 or Cœur de Pourfera all the way up through Blanchimont and into the bus stop chicane, is all about straight line speed and heavy braking potential, whereby our drivers we need to really master the art of getting on those brakes as late as possible, going through the bus stop chicane, and also getting the power on corner exit in order to head to that timeline and get the best possible lap time under their belt. And lap after lap delivery here is what is the big challenge, and well, we'll see that now as we see Jermaine Warren making his way through the bus stop chicane. We ride on board here as the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage driver takes us around for the first flying lap of the qualifying session. He's making his way down towards turn 1 into the source. He'll look to the left and look for his brake marker, that 100-metre board on his left, braking all the way down to second gear. A little bit wide to the apex wall there, but still brings it together nicely, using the traction control to stabilise the car on corner exit, for now charging up towards Eau Rouge and Radillon. And here, it's the uphill run through turns 2 through to 4. Let's listen in. Completely committed there. Was there a slight lift potentially through Eau Rouge? Well, it may have been the case, but no, in fact through Radillon I should say, but I don't think there was an upshift mid-apex, however, and that helped rotate the car. But full commitment there from Jermaine Warren, and now heading down the Kimmel Straight towards the braking zone for Lake Comet, braking at the start of the entry curve in there on the left, and rolling the car through the right into left sequence at turns 5 and 6, and as he makes his way through, now positioning the car over to the left as quickly as possible to turn into the right-hander of turn number 7, before now charging down the hill towards turn number 8, in towards Rivage Corner here, braking at the start of the curb on the left-hand side, and you'll see here coming down to 3rd gear, and he's got to balance the throttle very gently and make sure the car doesn't understeer wide. He does so very well before coming into X corner here, avoiding using the entry curve on the right-hand side there, oh my goodness, but using plenty of exit curve and getting the power very early and not letting the weight of the car settle, and almost losing it before now going into Pouhon corner. A dab of the brakes down to 4th gear, downshifting to help get the car bite into the apex of turn 10, and flat out immediately through turn number 11 and heading down towards the Fandra chicane at turns 12 and 13 here, looking for the start of the exit, the entry curve I should say, and as he brakes his way down the Gilberts to 3rd gear, using plenty of apex curve at turn 12 to pull the car around to straight line his way to turn 13, and as he exits out of the medium speed chicane now into Stablo 1, braking about 50 metres from corner and rolling on through here. We use plenty of the runoff area on the outside in order to widen the entry into Stablo 2, now into the final sector as he charges his way down the back straight, heading up towards Blanchimont corner here. This has been a very nice lap so far, albeit it's been on the limit, but that's what it's all about in qualifying. And as he heads through the kink of 16 here, let's listen in. Does he lift through Blanchimont? It is a brief lift initially, but still you can see there the full commitment and keeping it within the track limits just about, and now looking for his brake marker on there, braking at the 100-metre board and coming all the way down into the bus stop chicane, down to second gear. Will he come down to first for the final corner? No, he stays in second. And as he comes out of the final corner, it's been a smooth lap from Jermaine Warren. And as he crosses that line, it's going to be a 2:31.116, setting the benchmark. Will we see a response? Well, Justin Bragan immediately responds there in the Mercedes AMG by setting a 2:30.193, and that is almost a whole second faster. How does he do it? That's the big question. Well, I think it is the case. He just feels very hooked up in that Mercedes. But meanwhile, we look here to Glenn Bratton, who does have coming up behind, and that's Mark Senegal. And I think Mark Senegal has actually backed off there to give Bratton the opportunity to complete the lap unhindered. But you see Bratton taking a very tight line in towards the bus stop chicane, and in fact out-braking himself into the corner. I think Bratton just trying to get the car switched on. That McLaren 570S can be a little bit difficult to get up to speed when you haven't quite got it in the zone, and he'll be going again. It's a compromised first lap there, and that will be a 2:54.560, but I think it might be disallowed given he ran wide. But meanwhile, we do see Mark Senegal crossing the timeline here, and he'll be going on to what is his first flying lap, given the fact he backed off so heavily in the run to what was the bus stop chicane, and the McLaren driver here's got it all to do so far, given the fact he'll only have one more lap. And the thing is, everything's on the line here at Spa, and something we didn't really talk about, given the qualifying session for each class is effectively 7.5 minutes. That means our drivers only get 2 laps here, and it's normally the first lap which can be used as a banker. The second lap has to really be made as your ultimate lap. I think some drivers will be going out of the gate and trying to deliver on that first lap. And speaking of a driver who's trying to do that, much like Justin Bragan, our current provisional pole sitter in the M class, it is the case that Fernando Takahashi also trying to deliver, and the 2 Mercedes drivers, currently P1, P2, separated by only a tenth as things currently stand. And as Takahashi makes his way down towards Pouhon corner here, you can imagine that for him, given he switched from the BMW M4 in the early stage of this season when the Mercedes was introduced to iRacing, here's the case, he's really up to his driving to the next level, and the Mercedes does seem to be a very good fit for Takahashi as he rolls his way now into where's the Vantage chicane, heading through the right into left, and as he brings the car around here, it is the case in the YouTube and the Twitch chats. We say hello to those of you tuning in right now, and indeed we say hello to GT Eddie there in the Twitch chat in particular, saying can't wait to see your reaction to this one, where it sounds as though a lot happens over the course of the race, and I look forward to seeing what exactly does happen. But I hope you're all doing well, guys and girls tuning in, and in the meantime, do not be shy, feel free to say hi. It is the case we can see all the chats, and it's a very friendly community at Middle of the Pack Racing League. But we focus for the time being on Fernando Takahashi, as we are hearing that Warren and Bragan are making their way to the timeline, on where Jermaine Warren went off circuit, but he did improve to 2:30.786. Meanwhile, Justin Bragan has upped that pole time to a 2:29.778, and Takahashi has not been improving too much here as he makes his way through the final 2 corners. And as he does, can he find some more lap time, or is it the case it's a bridge too far? He crosses the line, it's not an improvement. Well, can Stefan Chalafu or anybody else potentially improve other than Justin Bragan? We see Chalafu make his way to the line. He's currently 1.4 seconds off a pole, and he halves that deficit to a 2:31.521. Lee Porter also improves. They're only a tenth off, but they don't change places. And then we do have Mark Senegal here making his way down, as we're hearing that Glenn Bratton has already headed to the pit. Now, what can Senegal do here to put a time on the board? Well, it's going to be an improvement. He hasn't set a time, but as he crosses the line, it will be, do believe, he goes a P16 ahead of Glenn Bratton. He puts in a 2:33.377, but it does seem to be the case that our McLaren drivers not having a strong time of proceedings here today at Spa. But meanwhile, as we see Glenn Bratton here heading around, he'll be heading to the pits at the end of this lap. This will be a cool down lap. We've now got our pros out on circuit, so it's Justin Bragan who takes the pole position in the AM class on a 2:29.778, and we would expect that the pros will out qualify him. Given the deltas between our drivers once more in the AM class, where we've got some sizable margins between our AMs, it could be the case that if our pros don't hook up their laps, they could find some of the AM drivers really intermingling on that grid, and that will really spice up the proceedings on the opening laps when the pros try to find their way through if they can. But right now, Onofre, our leading pro driver on their out lap, and we see behind that is Jerome Bajulaz, as we're hearing that both Butler and John Wilding have not taken to the circuit so far. So I do wonder what's happened there, where it's the case they're planning to start from the back of the grid. Perhaps they've got some technical issues with the car or something along those lines, but they are registered as being here today, so it may be the case they're just going to be a little bit late. Meanwhile, we do see Jerome Bajulaz here trying to stay close to the back of Onofre in terms of the run up towards the bus stop chicane, trying to essentially offset the poor straight line top end speed of the Porsche chicane, with the ability to reach as he goes a bit sideways there coming out of the first part of the bus stop. But we jump on board here with the Porsche driver as he heads onto his first flying lap of this qualifying session. Now the difference we'll see here is the Porsche's got a lot more rotation through that rear due to the centre of mass being towards the rear of the car, so as a result through the corners he'll come around quicker, but in terms of the straights that's where the Porsche will suffer. A nice run through the source there, you can see how close he got to the wall as he made his way through. That's the optimal line, you want to be that close because the closer he gets to the wall it's dipping into the ground, there's a drop in the ground, but he heads up the hill here through Eau Rouge and into Radillon. Full commitment here and coming across the bump there at turn number 4 and now down onto the Kemmel straight. Now heading along this straight will be the case. This is where we'll see the Porsche in the race lose out compared to its rivals as he's running very close to the limiter there before heading up into 6th gear, trying to keep the revs as high as possible before changing gear and now braking down to Lake Calm. And it's these chicane-esque sequences where we'll see the Porsche really master that direction change, and Virgil Leger using plenty of curve in terms of rotating through turn number 6. That way he gets a nice line through into 7 and keeps it there right on the limit. Now he makes his way down into turn number 8 into Rivage corner as he rolls his way on through it again. You can see how close he can keep it to the apex and get on the power nice and early on exit before rolling it into X corner, coming through turn number 9 and now heading down towards Pouhon. As he heads down the hill here will be the case, going up through the gearbox once again for a short period of time, but then having to go on the brakes, a dab of the brakes here and a downshift to go with it, rolling the car through, but he goes a little bit deep there, but just about keeps it within limits, and in fact by doing so there he's given himself a bit of a run, but I think he may have lost the temp in terms of how deep he went through turn number 10 as he heads through the Fangers chicane now through turn number 12, rolling up onto the apex curve before bringing the car to the left, and as he heads through turn number 13 here, using plenty of exit curve to his advantage, before breaking down to Stavlo 1. Now this has been a nice smooth lap so far for the Julas, and indeed is he gaining or losing out versus an offer in front? I think he's lost a little bit compared to the Aston Martin in front, so I may think he's going to be a little bit slower by comparison. We'll wait and see, but regardless, a nice run there through Stavlo 2 and now heading up towards Blanchimont, and we'll listen in once again to see if there is a lift. Indeed, there is a lift there, but in return he carries the speed through, and as he makes his way down into the bus stop chicane, braking at 100 metres, using that board on the left, coming all the way down the gearbox. We use plenty of apex curve there for turn 18. Turn 19 uses a little bit less curve to push the car through the corner, but now as he makes his way to the line, and off it goes, a P3 overall. And Virgil in fact was faster by 3 tenths at the end there, but Tanner Dibble, well, we were wondering, said that he was the one to watch out for. A 2:29.908 straight off the blocks. This is looking to be a Dibble's day once again, as meanwhile John Lauzon a bit further back here and really using the space afforded out on circuit, and also the fact he does have 2 more minutes of this session to go on to that next lap. It is the case here, John Lauzon in the McLaren 570S rolls his way out of the final corner, and what's it going to be as he comes to that timeline? It is going to be provisional pole in the Pro class here at 2:29.857. It's only half a tenth faster than Dibble, but then again half a tenth or 1,000th, it doesn't matter what the margin, it's enough to put him ahead for the time being. But now our drivers go on to their final qualifying laps here in the Pro class. 2 minutes left on the clock, and well, goodness me, look how close it is in terms of Lauzon as well, trying to get that overall pole position off of Justin Braggon. And will Braggon take that pole? If he does, then that will be an achievement here for the AM to out-qualify the pros. But as time presses on, we do look to Tanner Dibble by comparison, who right now only half a tenth off of Lauzon. And to be fair, that half a tenth is easily findable around this circuit, but given the fact everybody will be improving or aiming to improve on this second qualifying lap, the challenge will be finding that half a tenth for Dibble and then finding more in order to be able to offset whatever improvement Lauzon finds. And the fact that John Lauzon is the last driver out there, arguably he will have the circuit when it's in its best possible condition, when all the rubber has been laid down, or as much as possible that track temperature has been brought up with the cars heading on around right now. So Lauzon has really played this one smart in terms of where he is in that qualifying order, but Dibble will not be thinking about that right now. He'll be thinking about how he can improve. Well, I can tell you, in the opening sector he has not improved, and in the second sector so far he's not improving either. It seems to be the case that Dibble had a very strong opening lap, but this second lap is not going anywhere near what he'd like it to, and as he makes his way out to Stavlo 2, it is the case that Mercedes definitely seems to have a bit of one-lap wonder to it, not a 2-lap wonder. as he makes his way up towards Blanchimont at this point. Dibble presses on, and meanwhile we look to an offer here. He's currently our lead pro driver in terms of the sequence heading on through, so he'll be the first one to put that time in. He will be just about 5 seconds short of getting onto another flying lap. He will just miss out by the smallest of margins, or will it? It's going to be very close here whether he can get onto another lap. In fact, he will just about miss it, and the checkered flag comes out, and Offred does improve, but it's not enough to change his place. Bajulas does not improve. Does Dibble improve meanwhile? He does not. So it is the case that with what is Lauzon heading into the pit, well, John Lauzon takes pole position in the pro class, but it's not pole overall. That accolade will go to Justin Braggan in the AM class, and meanwhile Jerome Bajulas on a lap that was significantly improving in the first 2 sectors. It all went wrong in sector 3, and he's lost out significantly, has the Porsche driver, as he makes his way up through Eau Rouge and Radillon, and he's got quite the task to deal with. And on top of that as well, whilst he's qualified P5 overall, P3 in the pro class, in front of him will not just be a pro, it'll also be the AM of Fernando Takahashi, and I think Takahashi would love for that opportunity in order to take the fight to the pros. But meanwhile, as we see all of our drivers now parked down in the pit lane here, definitely a different qualifying session from what we expected, but it's this man here, Justin Braggan, who has taken the overall pole position. And indeed, we have seen Braggan put in some very strong performances over the course of this season, and he has continued to do that, and he has set a huge milestone in the end, taking overall pole by 8 hundredths on a 229.778, subject to confirmation when we do of course transition over to the formation of the grid. Well, as we do wait right now, what can we expect over 20 minutes of racing? Well, it is the case, of course, we don't have any what would be pit stops on the card, so as a result, we can't expect any undercuts or overcuts in terms of strategy. But what you want to do as a driver is essentially try to get yourself clear of those early opening lap incidents, and indeed, Spa is renowned for incidents, whether our drivers will be starting at the Formula 1 start line, which is coming out of the bus stop chicane where the official timing line is to end the lap, or indeed the endurance start. It is the case when they go too wide into Eau Rouge and Radillon. That's where we normally see the very hairy and scary moments, but of course our drivers will know to show one another plenty of respect, and I expect we will be seeing that as the race goes on. Some drivers will push quite hard, and Spa is very testing on the tyres and also the brakes, so it is the case as the race goes on we may see some drivers who get early gains start to fall away, whereas some other drivers who may play it smart in terms of not pushing the car too hard, they'll gradually build up momentum as the race goes on. And the one driver to watch out for regarding that is Fernando Takahashi, and well, he is down in the pit lane right now. You can see Takahashi in the red Mercedes. He's normally had a habit, and we saw it with the BMW M4, and we've seen it translate over into the Mercedes, where he has this capacity. He doesn't start off the race strong normally. He's normally a little bit off of the optimal pace in the early stages of the race, but once we hit about the 10th minute onwards, so about that halfway point, he normally starts to put that pace together, and that's where he comes alive. I think he is protecting the car quite a bit, but also keep your eyes out for the pros such as Edwin Offred, again another driver who's more about race pace than one lap magic in qualifying, and that's what makes this very interesting indeed. And also we do have the unknown conundrums of Jordan Butler and John Wilding. If they do take to the grid, they'll be starting from the back of the grid, and it'll be interesting to see how they fitting to the mix, as we are just waiting at this time for the transition to the formation of the grid. And as we do, just very briefly, for a little bit longer wait for that transition to occur, it should be no more than a minute or so from now. It is the case that with things building up here, we've got quite a low sun at the moment. It is the case that the sun's not exactly making itself well known to the circuit, and that will help bring the circuit temperature down quite a bit. And therefore, tyres may not be as big of a concern for our drivers here at Spa, but it is the case that they'll be thinking about how can they get those tyres up to temperature nice and early on in the proceedings, given the fact they'll want as much temperature in the tyres when they make their way into Rouge and Radillon for the first time to carry that speed. But indeed, we now have had all of our drivers made their way out of the pits, and it is the case they are now making their way to the grid, and let's take you through that grid for today's race. So for round number 8 of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT4 Championship, as brought to you on iRacing, and here today at Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, it is the case that Justin Braggan is confirmed as our overall pole sitter for Middle of the Pack Racing, the AM taking class pole position and overall pole position on a 229.779, only in the end 7.5 hundredths ahead of Blue Flag Motorsports' John Lauzon, who took the pro pole position. Tanner Dibble and Edwin Offred behind on row number 2, DNA Racing's Dibble versus Ascension Racing's Onofre, and then we will have Jerome Bajulas starting in P5 for Blue Flag Motorsports, being joined by Stefan Chalafou, P6 there, the AM driver, doing very well in qualifying. P7 and P8 made up of AM drivers, Lee Porter for middle of the pack racing, ahead of Mark Senegal for Sunday GT Turtles, and then we will have John Wilding and Jordan Butler starting on row number 5 together, and then it is Jermaine Warren and Fernando Takahashi who line up on the 6th row, and indeed their lap times, it would seem, have been deleted for track limits, and that's what has been decided by the automated lap investigator between the qualifying and the race, that their times have been deleted for track limit breaches. And then starting on our final row, it will be Glenn Bratton again, not setting a time due to their times being invalidated due to track limits. Will that further add to the concerns with regards to where our drivers will be starting on the grid today? Indeed, that'll add to the potential drama we could see in the open laps, where we've got quite a few pros out of position, and John Wilding and Jordan Butler in particular not taking to this qualifying session. That will really mix up the field as we do wait to go racing here. All 13 of our drivers just making their way to the grid, and once they are there, it'll be the case that we'll start to make our way underway for this short formation lap. And indeed, we can see the pace car there, and indeed this helicopter camera, indeed the blimp camera as we prefer to refer it. We've got the large blimp making its way over the circuit at the moment. As our drivers get underway here, it is the case we can see all of the field together, and Justin Brangan now leads the field down towards the bus stop chicane, and then when he emerges, it'll be the case they will go green and go racing when they come to the start-finish line as they make their way down towards the source. But plenty here for Justin Brangan to have to deal with on the open lap. He'll need to hold off the charger John Lauzon, but on top of that as well, in the midfield, some drivers who've really got some major points potential on the car, such as Stefan Chalafou, starting in P2 in the AM class, P6 overall, and they will have Lee Porter and Mark Senecal immediately behind, and that will really complicate matters as they make their way away. But we do wait here for the field to get underway, and it is going to be very shortly Justin Brown from middle of the pack racing who takes us to the green. And it's lights out and away we go here for round number 8 of the GT4 Championship, with Justin Brown getting a good start, and John Lauzon there under pressure immediately from Tanner Dibbles. They make the way down to La Source. Dibble up the inside as they roll their way on through. Meanwhile, further back, it looks like all our drivers are safely navigating their way through La Source for the first time of asking, and now heading on towards Eau Rouge. And Justin Brown getting a brilliant start, being 8 tenths between himself and Lauzon already. But meanwhile, Lauzon versus Dibble, it is the case that Lauzon gets back ahead as they make their way on up the hill. Further back there, we can see Jerome Bajulas in hot pursuit of Edwin Onofre, as meanwhile they roll the way through, and around to the rear of the pack, Jermaine Warren as well, having a reasonable start. No major incidents as they head down to the Kimmel Straight, but we can see that Fernando Takahashi meanwhile going side by side briefly there with Jermaine Warren, who's had a slowdown, I think, as John Wilding comes on through, and as they make their way under, braking into Le Cobb, it is the case that they all head on through, and everybody has made it safely for the opening few corners. But we've definitely had a slowdown there for Jermaine Warren. He's been required to slow down due to a track limit car coming through a Radillon, and therefore he's dropped all the way down to P12, but he'll be now looking to come on back as meanwhile, oh goodness me, and Fernando Takahashi there, there's been some sort of contact with, I think it may be contact with John Wilding, unless I'm very much mistaken. We've just caught the end of that, but Takahashi has been turned, whether it's under his own impetus or contact with another driver, we're not 100% sure. But meanwhile, we look from the rear of the field to the front of the field, and Justin Brown, as he makes his way down to Pouhon corner here, looking very comfortably in charge at this moment, but still there's a long way to go. There's still 19 minutes, and when they haven't even completed the first lap, let's not count anything out yet as they head on down into the Fangers chicane. But as they do, we see Bajulas here trying to close up behind and offer it as they roll their way through the chicane and through the right to left, as we're hearing that Glenn Bratton has had an offer. In fact, Glenn Bratton's had a spin at what was Pouhon corner. He rejoins, and Takahashi goes around the outside there, as is it's natural to do so, to go around the outside when the driver's lost it on the inside. But meanwhile, Mark Senecal here, we cut back to our P7 driver overall, P3 in the AM class, and under pressure here from Lee Porter, and Senecal getting a good start, to be fair, gaining the place on Lee Porter, and now Lee Porter's coming back with a vengeance here, saying I want my place back, as they make their way up towards Blanchimont, and Lee Porter is going to take a look up the inside into Blanchimont. It's going to be be side by side. The two McLaren drivers, Porter on the right, Senegal on the left of your picture. And as they make the way into left-hander, Lee Porter comes on for a nice move there, but he goes very wide. And Mark Senegal will look to come back at him in the run to the bus stop chicane. I wonder if Lee Porter will have to give that place back. He does indeed. He has to lift off and yield as he used too much exit curbing and also the runoff area beyond. After one lap, it is Justin Braggan who leads by only 6/10 of a second ahead of John Lauzon in P2, followed by Tanner Dibble P3, then Edwin Offer at P4, being chased hotly by Jerome Bajulas in P5. Then behind him in P6 is Stefan Chalafour, followed by Mark Senegal P7, Lee Porter P8, followed by John Wilding P9, Jermaine Warren completes the top 10, followed by Jordan Butler P11, and then Fernando Takahashi in P12, ahead of Glenn Bratton, who runs in P13 here as he makes his way onto the second lap. But we look from him to our leader here, and it is the case that our leader holds on, albeit John Lauzon inching ever closer as they come charging down to the Kimmel Straight for the second time. And as they roll their way on through, it is one of those situations where I think John Lauzon has been gradually building up, and he's going to take a peek here as Lauzon up the inside into Lecombe. On the anchors they go, and well, he's got his nose almost in there, but he has to back out. Meanwhile, Chalafour trying to go on the offensive here as the AM driver versus Jerome Bajulas. And for Chalafour right now, this is definitely one of those situations whereby he will be thinking about trying to take some places off the pros and stay away from Mark Senegal, is right now running in P2 in the AM class, doing a great job here, Stefan Chalafour, and this is the kind of performances we've been expecting over the course of the season from the AM driver, and he's delivering here as the privateer as he makes his way out of what is Ravage Corner into X-Bend, but as he rolls his way through the left hand, he's fallen back a little bit from the back of Bajulas, and I think just struggling a little bit there through Lecombe to get the car rotated. But meanwhile, Jerome Bajulas, well, he has got an absolute task in his hands to be right on board here with Bajulas as he hunts after where's Edwin Offray in that P4 position. But as they come down the hill this time through Pouhon and down into the Vantage chicane, it is the case of this battle for P4, falling away from the top three slightly, albeit not too much. They've fallen back by 2 seconds, and therefore already we're seeing a battle for P4 emerge behind as the best of the rest position, whereas the top three are trying to run off into the distance. But of course, it is one of those situations whereby over the race time we could see the leaders potentially fall back, especially if they're pushing too hard early on, as we watch Bajulas here roll his way out of Stavelot 2 and head up towards Blanchimont this time. And of course, in the draft of the Aston Martin in front, that draft is definitely going to aid him here on the straightaways, albeit he'll need to lift a little bit earlier as he makes his way into Blanchimont in order to offset that dirty air and the loss of front end downforce that he'll receive as a result of it as he comes on through. But meanwhile, we look from them to our leaders here, and in particular Justin Braggan still under pressure from Lauzon, but in return Tanner Dibble tries to give pursuit as well, and Dibble not able to take that pole position, and it is the case of that dominance of Bathurst. I think he's been brought back down to earth slightly after what seems to be an absolutely dreamlike day at Mount Panorama, and the DNA Racing driver at this point, we find himself P2 in the Pro Class, P3 overall, as he goes hunting after Lauzon here, rolling his way through La Source, and meanwhile John Lauzon almost losing it there as he heads out onto the exit curbing. As they now make the way in the charge towards Eau Rouge and Radillon, it is the case that Justin Braggan holding firm, and we ride on board here in the middle of the pack racing driver as he heads up the hill. And remember, of course, that now in race trim, they've got that fuel in the car's a bit heavier, and you can see already John Lauzon just taking so much more speed. In fact, Lauzon absolutely coming on full charge here, and that's John Lauzon on the left of your picture. He's going for the move versus Justin Braggan. The AMG, of course, when it gets into the high gears, will have the straight line advantage, but Lauzon's not letting this one go. He goes up the inside, and the number 77 driver takes the lead of the race. As they make their way through Lecombe, of course, this back and forth exchange of positions for the lead will only start to bring the likes of Edwin Offret and Jerome Bajulas closer and closer to the leaders. And in fact, that gap has now come down slightly. As meanwhile, Tanner Dibble takes a look up the inside there. A cheeky look to the inside into Ravage Corner. It didn't work out that time, but he could almost go for it. And I think what he's trying to say to Justin Braggan is, look, I want to go hunting after the pro leader. I'm not worried about you. Just get out of the way. But in return, I don't think that Justin Braggan's going to give that up. As meanwhile, oh, goodness me. And we saw at the start of the race that John Wilding went on past Fernando Takahashi when Takahashi had a spin at what was the XLA Comet turn number 7, and now John Wilding has had the roles reversed as Takahashi has made his way on past. We're not sure what's happened there other than John Wilding is parked off circuit and he returns. I think that may have been a spin under his own impetus, but meanwhile we look from the back of the field here towards the front, and John Lauzon under huge pressure in the driving seat of that McLaren as he rolls his way into Stavelot 1. 7 minutes this race complete by the time they exit Stavelot 2, and right now the Blue Flag Motorsports driver has got it all to do in terms of holding on over the remainder of the race time distance as they charge on down towards Blanchimont corner. But the thing for Lauzon is the fact that he won't worry too much about beating Justin Bragan in terms of where he won't want to have the pro pride damaged and the fact he won't want an AM to beat him, but at the same time his main rival Tanner Dibble is in P3 here in the sequence. He's not right behind technically, and therefore as they make their way down towards the bus stop chicane, I think if Lauzon can keep Bragan between himself and Dibble, he may be safe. But speaking of being safe, he won't be safe if he goes deep into the bus stop chicane like that on a repetitive basis. And in return, by going deep, you can see Justin Bragan there was forced to try and go round the outside on turn 19. And as they make their way down towards La Source, once again Bragan's going to have the inside run, but he hasn't got the momentum to stay fully alongside, and he has to back out. But look at this, Edwin Offret and Jerome Bajulaz in their little battle for P4 have crept up towards the leaders right now, and I do wonder whether Bajulaz and Offret have sort of temporarily, if you will, agreed a bit of a truce, albeit they can't talk to one another, but I think they both noticed the fact that the leaders are falling towards them, and therefore right now the focus should be on closing up to the top three rather than squabbling for P4, albeit I think Jerome Bajulaz, they're right on the limit of track limits as he made his way through Radillon. I'm not sure if he's got a slowdown there, it doesn't look like he has, but meanwhile, speaking of someone who feels like they've got a slowdown right now, John Lauzon with no toe down the Kemmel Straight here. It will be the case he'll feel as though the car is a snail by comparison, but still quite fast, it must be said. Meanwhile, Lee Porter here battling with where's Mark Senegal. He tries to go to the inside here, there's Lee Porter, but Senegal deep on the brakes into Lacombe. That's going to give him the inside defensive line into 6, but almost outbreaking himself there. Lee Porter stays with him on the inside into turn number 7 here. They battle side by side, but again, Mark Senegal just about holds on to that P7 position, P3 in the AM class. He wants that AM podium today, and to be fair, at the rate he's going, he will have earned it if Lee Porter cannot find a way past. But as they make their way down through Ravage Corner, there's a little rivalry here for the final spot on the AM podium, definitely starting to build up as they head on down through X Corner. Meanwhile, I think so. You may be asking what's happened to P2 driver in the AM class, Stefan Chalafu. Well, here is Chalafu, and he's running a very lonely P6 right now as he heads on down out of Pouhon corner. Oh, goodness me, and a whack there to the exit curb head on, almost upsetting the car for Chalafu. Chalafu's got to be careful. He does that too often, and he could really damage the car or see the car go off circuit. But meanwhile, it is the case that we look from Chalafu to our race leaders here, and that's a very good point there, GT Eddie, in the Twitch chat with regards to the controversial tyre dipping that we've seen recently in the official iRacing 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps, where it was the case that a lot of top split drivers, and even in the lower split, some drivers were using the grass around the circuit to cool the tyres based on the modelling mechanic in iRacing, and other drivers are doing that here. I'm sure if they were found guilty of doing it, the consequences would be extreme. It may be the case they are required to go out there and mow the grass themselves by hand, but meanwhile, John Lauzon holds on to the lead, and he won't be thinking about touching the grass. Instead, he'll be thinking about how he can keep the grass green Mercedes of the middle of pack racing driver Justin Bragan at bay as they head down towards turn number 1 in the charge. But it's a 5-way fight for the lead now, and this is absolutely brilliant as it is the case. P1 to P5 separated by only a margin of 2 seconds, if that. And as they roll their way on out of La Source here, it is the case they stay together for now, but for how long will it be before somebody upsets the apple cart or wants to get greedy and get a place? That's the question. But John Lauzon definitely starting to try and break away. He's got the advantage to 6 tenths this time as they go charging up through Eau Rouge and Radillon, and I think Lauzon is starting to feel a little bit more settled in the car. And it's to this man now, Tanner Dibble, to really find a way past Justin Bragan. As you can see, an off-road there trying to follow Tanner Dibble's draft down the Kemmel Straight, but Tanner Dibble here is going to have the draft run on what is Bragan. He goes up the inside here for P2. Meanwhile, behind, it was Bajulaz who tried to peel on out to do the same to Edwin Offred, but that Porsche just has no straight line speed when it's not in the draft, and that is the pain that Bajulaz is dealing with. He needs an Offred to make a mistake in order to be able to get that run down towards Lacombe. Otherwise, he's got to sit there in the draft and try and find the move later on in the lap, and that can be very frustrating, I can tell you, as a driver, when you've got a car which is right there competing with the driver in front, but on the straightaway where you want to go for that overtake, there's just no way through. You have not got that final 10% in terms of speed, and therefore all you can do is sit as close as possible and either look for the opportunity elsewhere on the lap or try and put that pressure on to force your rival into a mistake, and that's exactly what Bajulaz has got to do here. He's got to try and get an off-road to make that error, but meanwhile, Tanner Dibble here will now have to go defensive after passing Justin Bragan, and we ride on board here with the DNA Racing Mercedes driver as he rolls his way out the Fangers chicane, and as he does with over half the race complete, we've got 8 minutes left on the clock by the time they head into the runs of Blanchimont. It is the case, possible to the final lap. Tanner Dibble here really feeling that pressure, but in return I think John Lauzon's actually just dipped a wheel beyond the exit curbing of Stablo 2, and that's lost him a lot of momentum. We cut back to the exterior cameras, and it is the case that John Lauzon under huge pressure. He's going to go defensive here up into Blanchimont, and I think Lauzon's got to at this point. I don't think there's any way away from this as they roll the way through an offer there once again under pressure from Bajulas, but they stay as they were for the time being, or do they as they head down to the braking zone of the bus stop chicane. And John Lauzon here is going to go very late on the brakes. We have seen that McLaren can be a little bit loose on its brakes. It's not quite as strong compared to its peers, but Lauzon gets it hooked up this time and now making his way down towards the source once again. They head on to what for them is lap number 6. Charging on down, and in the rear of your picture you can see a very lonely Stefan Chalafoud once again, as meanwhile Mark Senegal continues to hold on to that P7 position overall. P3 in the AM class ahead of Lee Porter, and Lee Porter not finding a way on through. He's going to have too soon, because look who's building up behind him. That is Jermaine Warren, who is on a charge to try and get onto the podium for the AM class here. In the middle of the pack, racing driver will take every point he can before going into the season finale. Fernando Takahashi a further 4.3 seconds behind there, and Takahashi having a very difficult day here at Spa, and it is the case also Glenn Bratton having the same, and Jordan Butler and John Wilding as well, all having very difficult races in this penultimate round of the championship. As Takahashi makes his way up the hill here once more, it is the case that we do look from him to our leaders here, and it is the case this long snake train continues its way on around, and well, at the back of this pack it is Jerome Bajulas here. Oh goodness me, and that is I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that's Justin Braggon into the wall there, coming out of turn number 7, and Will Chalafoud's going to come on through to take what is P5 off of him overall. And well, it is the case that exit curb at Les Combes has caught so many drivers out, and Justin Braggon has just fallen victim to the exit curb at Les Combes as well, and that is very unfortunate for the AM driver who was leading for so much of the race in terms of the AM class and even overall. He's now got Stefan Chalafoud in front of him, and Chalafoud will be thinking at this point, am I leading this AM class right now? And he's going to look in his rearview mirror and see a very angry middle of the pack racing Mercedes behind, and he'll go, yes, I am leading, and now I've got second place right on my heels. And I don't think Justin Braggon is going to hesitate. If he can pull the trigger to get that lead back, he will go for it, and Chalafoud has now got a lot to do in a long period of time. He's got 6 minutes plus the final lap, and he's going to have to hold on to this position as he makes his way out of the Fangers chicane and down to Stablo 1. And as he rolls on through here, this is going to be very tooth and nail, and well, he's going to get a good run through Stablo 2. He goes a bit deep, he misses the apex. That's going to compromise his line. He just about keeps it on the exit curbing and within track limits, but already we can see how it is the case that Justin Braggon teeing up a potential move as we ride on board here with Justin Braggon as he looks at that move beyond Blanchimont, and as he rolls his way into a Blanchimont corner here, he'll look to get on that power as soon as he can, and he gets a good run, and it looks like Chalafoud's going to have to go very defensive here as they make the way down into the bus stop chicane, but Braggon's going to be braver on the brakes. Is it enough? He just about gets ahead. He shuts the door as well on the corner apex, and Justin Braggon returns to lead of the AM class, but he is out of that fight for the lead of this race overall, but he will now try and break away, as meanwhile in the rear of your picture, your eyes do not deceive you, we've got a three-way fight for the rest of the AM podium, well in particular the final spot in the AM podium, and that is between Mark Senegal, who's holding on to that P3, Lee Porter and Jermaine Warren. These guys P7 to P9 respectively in the AM, in the overall category, as they roll their way on through the source once again. Less than 5 minutes remaining right now, and we've also got Fernando Takahashi trying to creep up to this battle very gradually as well. And you can imagine if we had another driver added into the mix, it would only increase the drama and the stakes for Mark Senegal, the Sunday GT Turtles driver, as we see a bit of a cut there coming through Radillon for Lee Porter. Now, does he have a slowdown from that, or has he nailed the cut? I think he's just about nailed it perfectly, and he will not lose out, but as he makes his way down towards Les Combes, it is the case we look from this battle for P3 in the AM class to the battle for the lead, and here it is, John Lauzon versus Tanner Dibble. Dibble's going to try and go round the outside of Ravage corner, and my goodness, Dibble has so much confidence in that Mercedes, and Lauzon covering him off, but Tanner Dibble takes the lead of this race. And what a brilliant pass for that. But meanwhile, battling for P3 behind. We see an off-road. They're getting a poor run out of X. He's got Bajulaz on his outside here as they battle on the brakes into Pouhon. And Bajulaz goes all the way round there. I think an off-road was always going to have to back out a little bit earlier on the brakes by comparison, given how tight that apex is into turn 10. But still, we had to make Bajulaz really work for it. And Bajulaz gains the place. So an off-road now having to really go back on the offensive in the time remaining. They will have, I do believe, one more lap after this one, perhaps even two more laps, depending on how soon. In fact, I think it will be just the one lap. As they make their way down and around through Stavlo, they won't be thinking about that. They'll be thinking about getting those places as soon as humanly possible. But meanwhile, speaking of gaining places, what you can see here is the case that John Lauzon, after losing the lead this race, he's already losing momentum to Tanner Dibble, and now Jerome Bajulaz is all over the back of John Lauzon. Where has the pace gone for the Blue Flag Motorsports driver? It's the case, it's almost since he's been past the lead, the pace has just dipped out of the car, or whether it's the case, he's just simply had a bad run out to Stavlo. As he makes his way down to the braking zone here, we really do want to see John Lauzon pick it up right now, because if he can go back after Tanner Dibble, there will only be one more lap. They will go on to the final lap. Tanner Dibble will lead them on to lap number 8. It is the case, it is Dibble who leads ahead of John Lauzon, then Jerome Bajulaz and Edwin Offray in this battle for the Pro Class win and the overall win. And I can tell you that Justin Braggan, a further 8 seconds behind, is leading the AM class ahead there of Stefan Chalafeur as we see the white flag waving thanks to Barry Flagg. And meanwhile, we have got Mark Senegal here trying to hold on to P3 in the AM class. P7 overall versus Jermaine Warren and Lee Porter, and Jermaine Warren up the inside of Lee Porter under braking into the source. And I think it is the case he'll get this done as Lee Porter goes very deep into the corner. I think being caught by the marbles. But meanwhile, we come back to Lauzon versus Dibble, and Lauzon now springs the surprise, which is the run through Rouge and Radillon. Well, we forgot about that, but Lauzon was very fast through there in the early stage of the race. Now Dibble tucks back into the slipstream briefly and then gets the overspeed to go for the move into Lacon. But John Lauzon says, there's no way you're coming through there, pal. And as they make the way through turns 5 and 6 and into 7, John Lauzon retakes the lead of this race with a bit of strategy in terms of dropping back to get the slipstream in the run down towards Lacon. And meanwhile, Bajulaz has to go defensive here versus an offer in the run to Ravage Corner. It's very much alive, this battle for the overall win and the Pro Class win, and indeed the whole of the Pro Class podium right now. Which of these four will be on that podium, we'll have to see as they make the way down through X and head on towards Pouhon Corner here. It's this brilliant stuff. A minute remains. This is the last lap, and as they roll the way down here in the penultimate round of the GT4 Championship, it is the case that Dibble once again looking to go on the offensive. He tries to go around the outside on the exit Pouhon. It's not happening. He won't be able to take the inside into the Fangers chicane. Lauzon's got it covered off, but as he makes his way up, try and go round the outside to inside here through the chicane, Lauzon has to give him the space as Tanner Dibble has the grip there, and as they roll their way on out into Stavlo 1, Lauzon gets the better exit. Dibble tucks back in, and as they head for Stavlo 1 and into Stavlo 2, it's about getting the best possible exit here for the run to Blanchimont and then the bus stop chicane. It's all going to come down to the final couple of quarters here at Spa in terms of who takes the win. And John Lauzon right now, he'll literally be egging that McLaren on. He'll literally be leaning forward in his seat to try and give it a little bit more as they make the way through in towards Blanchimont Corner at this point. Lauzon leads. They stay in the line for the time being, but now will we see Dibble try and cut to the inside? No, Lauzon's got it covered off there. He's going to have to make Dibble go round the outside. Dibble's going to oblige. He'll try and go outside to inside. They roll the way on through. Dibble goes a little bit too deep, and Lauzon gets the door covered off. And as they make their way out the final corner, it's a charge to the checkered flag, and it's going to be John Lauzon who takes the win here, overall in the Pro Class, ahead of Tanner Dibble. Jerome Bajulaz tried to sneak into P2, but couldn't quite at the end, and Edwin Offray brings home P4 overall in the Pro Class. Meanwhile, Justin Braggan will make it another win in the AM Class, P5 today, ahead of Stefan Chalafou, a brilliant P2, and then Mark Senegal will hold on to that final step of the AM podium in a very deserved P3 in class, P7 overall, ahead of Jermaine Warren. Then Lee Porter comes home, P9 overall, P5 in the AM class, ahead of Fernando Takahashi, and then we have Jordan Butler coming to the line, P11. In fact, I think it's the case he's just creeping to the line here. I'm not sure what's wrong with the car. John Wilding will actually pip into the line, and Jordan Butler will come home P12 ahead of Glenn Bratton, who's made making his way right now down towards the finish. But I think we've got some donuts here, and Tanner Dibble in particular doing some donuts for the crowd. And it is the case, burning the car, as we do see a little bit of a nose tap there between Wilding and Dibble as they made the way on down towards what is La Source. And we also see that, I believe that is Sean Butler saying hello for DNA Racing. The 3 DNA Racing drivers there all celebrating their results. There's no doubt about that. But meanwhile, it is the case that we cannot forget, of course, that we do still have one driver making his way to the finish right now. And whilst he's had a difficult day here, he's still keeping in it, it has to be said. And that's what it's all about. Whether you're the fastest driver out there or the slowest, it doesn't matter. Bring the car to the end. And we do run out of VHS tape there for the iRacing replay file. But Glenn Bratt in the end did come home in P13 when all was said and done. And let's take a look at those race results. So in the end, it was the case that after 20 minutes of racing here in round number 8 of the GT4 Championship, as hosted by Middle of the Pack Racing League on iRacing, this race being at Spa-Francorchamps, John Malzon taking that overall win in the end by 3 attempts ahead of Tanner Dibble, and then Jerome Bajulas completing the overall and the pro podium in that P3 slot, just ahead of Edwin Offer in P4, and then a sizable gap of what was 8 seconds back to Justin Braggan coming home P5. I think regretting what could have been here today in terms of potentially taking that win overall, but still he'll take the win in the AM class, and that puts him very well on his way to the conclusion of the championship, with Stefan Chalafu coming home P6 and Mark Senegal P7, the P5 through to P7 representing your AM podium, and then Jermaine Warren P8, Lee Porter P9, and Fernando Takahashi completing the top 10, with John Wilding, Jordan Butler and Glenn Bratton coming outside the top 10, P11 through to P13 respectively. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is the case. It's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you do want to know more about the series that are run by the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, or the MPRL community in short, or just what we stand for and what we represent, then why not check out our official Discord, link available on screen. Alternatively, if you are so Twitter inclined, you can always go to our Twitter, that is twitter.com/MOP Racing. But now our drivers will be packing up their bags, and they'll be making their way from what is Belgium to Germany for the final round of the season. It is the case, we head to the Nürburgring Nordschleife for the final round of racing. The racing itself will be happening on what is Wednesday the 3rd of August, but we'll be bringing it to you all live, effectively, or as close as possible as we can to live, as a post-round broadcast as of Sunday the 7th of August 2022. How will it all conclude? Who will be our Pro and AM champions overall? And indeed, who will take the Endurance Stage Championship trophies as well? We'll conclude all that and more in a week's time. But until then, thank you for tuning in. We have been the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.